Hello and welcome to this week's Royal Roundup. And there has been lots of royal news this week, and lots of you have been speaking online about it, sharing your opinions. It was only yesterday we heard a Spotify podcast, which has been in the production for a fair few months now. Well, it had its first episode yesterday, which came to light a story about Archie. But over in the UK, we have got some news about a move, a school as well for the Cambridge's children, and Lady Louise is earning minimum wage in a summer job in a garden centre. Lots of people have got things to say about that. So if you are one of them and you want to get involved in the Royal Roundup today, then just pop your questions and your comments in the comment section below, and then we can get them answered for you by Daily Express's royal correspondent, Richard Palmer, who, of course, joins us as he does every week. Welcome, Richard.
Hello.
So it's obviously...
I've got volume this week as well.
Yeah, well, that's a good start. That is a good start. I don't know if you tuned in last week, but there was about a 5-minute monologue from myself at the beginning, kind of giving a roundup and everything that was going on whilst Richard tried to sort out technical issues. But we're both working from home today and things seem to be going well. Let's hope that the doorbell doesn't ring off. Of course, we're going to kick off today with Lady Louise. Now, it's been obviously lots of positive coverage for her. We've seen her more so recently within the press as she's growing up. And she is now going to be doing a summer job. Just because she's royal doesn't stop her from doing a minimum wage job in a garden centre. So what do you think, Richard? Tell us more.
Well, I think she was doing it. I think she stopped doing it now. I think that she'd more or less finished. She had finished. She was up in Balmoral by the time it emerged that she'd been doing this. And my understanding is that she's not expected to return there.
Right.
I think it's it's fantastic that she's doing that.
Yes.
I think people around her maybe weren't so impressed that this came out because I think they feel quite protective of her, and they would argue that she's a very minor member of the royal family, isn't doing official engagements on behalf of the Queen, and indeed I don't think she's ever expected to on behalf of whoever succeeds the Queen. So they sort of feel she's a private citizen. Well, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily agree with that. I mean, she's still, I think...
She is definitely still part of the royal family.
The 16th in line to the throne, if I remember rightly. And she has appeared in public at official engagements on the balcony, etc., at the Jubilee. So... I don't think it was a major issue, a major controversy, but I think there was a slight irritation that why are the media writing about this? But as you say, I think it showed her in a good light, and I think the coverage was really quite positive, and really anything that gives members of the royal family, young members of the royal family, some experience of real life and meeting ordinary people who aren't going to fee-paying schools, etc. It's all good, all the better for them. So I think, we don't really know for sure how much she was earning, but it seemed likely, let's say, that she was earning close to the minimum wage for an 18-year-old, which is £6.83 an hour.
And I mean, lots of arguments on Twitter about this and other social platforms is, well, she doesn't need the money. She's part of the royal family. There are people who need these jobs more.
I sort of understand that argument, but I mean, unemployment isn't at a high level at the moment. I don't think it's that difficult to get a job. There are lots of vacancies in some parts of some parts of the economy, particularly like the care sector. Not so sure about garden centres, but No, I mean, I just think most people will think good for her, and a better. Somebody
So,
saying I admire her for doing it. It's a great experience because now, when speaking to public, she can empathise with and respect for the working class. Exactly. She's got a bit more experience of dealing with people, and hopefully, she'll do more jobs during the next 3 or 4 years when she's at St Andrews University, because she's going off to St Andrews to read English. And best of luck to her, really.
Yes, and again, Val, Lady Louise is a lovely lady and a real credit to her parents. So again, as you said, she's getting lots of positive coverage, and she's obviously got the news that she's going to university, which is fantastic. You have a connection, and with that university in particular, don't we?
They do, yes. So I'm sure she's been speaking to the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge about their experiences of being at St Andrews, or she's been up at Balmoral with her parents and brother James, I think. So as far as I'm aware, they're still there. And the Cambridges arrived a few days ago. Separately, actually, it was quite interesting. We've seen a few cases recently where Kate's been arriving with one or more of the children, and then William arrives later separately. Don't think, I just think that's busy lives, and the children perhaps, they've got parties to go to or things to do.
They do have lives outside of the royal.
Exactly. So, but yes, Kate was photographed arriving at Inverness Airport with children. It seems like they'd come on a budget airline.
Yes.
Don't think that was a PR exercise. Before, there's always somebody who says, "Oh, it's been a setup," but no, I just think that's how they roll, really, when they can.
And even though they flew economy on a budget airline, whatever the case may be, they would still have security with them, wouldn't they?
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, the security are ever present, really. Yes,
yeah.
So,
and in terms of Lady Louise going to university, will she be entitled to any security there? Or anything alongside, obviously being within the royal family, any protocols or anything?
And that's an interesting question, and probably not one that Buckingham Palace would welcome me discussing. But my guess would be that the police protection extends to her and her brother when they are with their parents, but having a permanent sort of police bodyguard team around her while she's a student, I'd be surprised if that were the case. But no doubt, there will be there'll be a uniformed police presence in St Andrews, and probably somebody keeping a discreet eye on her. And as I say, I don't think the expectation has ever really been that she would become a working member of the royal family. I'm sure that, a bit like Beatrice and Eugenie, she and her brother will be patrons of some charities at some point, and their royal status, as such as it is, their courtesy titles, will add some kudos to the charity to have their name on the letterhead and to have them doing things. But I don't think we'll ever see them undertaking engagements on behalf of King Charles III or Prince William, or King William V.
All right. Well, as you can tell, even from our comment section, it's going down very well. So I'm sure lots of people will wish her well, and I'm sure we'll see lots of lovely photos in the next, should I say, couple of years from her. But we're now going to move on to the Cambridges. You've already just mentioned about the fact that the Duchess of Cambridge got that budget airline, which has obviously come into lots of debate recently. We've spoken about this before, travel for the royal family, and you don't think that it was a PR exercise?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know the precise circumstances, but they're a busy family. For all I know, George may have been taking part in a sports competition or something. So
Yeah.
they go separately. I don't think we saw how George and William arrived at Balmoral.
No. But William will be apparently now being more hands-on, doing the school run.
Yeah, I think we'll see a little bit of that. I mean, we sort of touched on this, I think last week or the week before.
Yeah, we did.
The move to, I mean, these were the two least closely guarded royal secrets of all time, I think, because the move to Adelaide Cottage had been well trailed in the media, although it hadn't been officially confirmed. And the school had certainly, there'd been speculation about the school being the front runner, and one or two journalists had written pieces saying that the children were expected to go there. I have to say I'd avoided it, and partly that's because, I mean, it's debatable, but where you're talking about children's education, there are sensitivities there in terms of our code of practice, the editor's code of conduct, and just didn't really want to go there until it was confirmed. As much as I did know weeks and weeks ago that this was the school they were going to. So although it may not have been news to a lot of people, the confirmation of both the move to Windsor and the move to the new school for all three children did get a lot of coverage in our paper and others as well. Quite rightly so, I think. It's an interesting move because it's a new life for them. It's a life in the country, and as you say, I mean, their house is going to be about a 15-minute drive from Lambrook School. So I think, we'd expect to see both parents taking their turns at school runs. I mean, probably Kate more, because it has been made clear to me that her focus. They're both very focused on their children, and they have the luxury to do that. But whereas a lot of people working full-time jobs maybe don't have as much time to be there at both ends of the school day or whatever. But I suspect that a lot of their engagements will be timed so that one or both of them can take the kids to school and pick them up. But of course, there's always the nanny, and there are others.
I was going to say that she'll be close by on hand. If
who can stand in for them.
And the school is costing an awful lot of money, and that is without boarding. Apparently, it's about £53,000 a year for all of them. That's before they even got the school uniform.
Yes.
Which obviously to people at the moment, even people, a few years ago, an obscene amount of money, really, for normal people to even, contemplate spending without even getting a pair of school uniform shoes. It's an awful lot. And they're also aware of the cost of living crisis. But do you think this is something that they won't want to be public knowledge, just how much is being spent on the school fees?
Well, I mean, normally school fees are published on the website, but I think they didn't publish, Lambrook School didn't, as I couldn't find anyway, their 22, 23 school fees. The 21, 22 fees were published. There will be discounts if you've got more than one kid at the school, I imagine. So, but it seems round about 50,000 seems about the right figure. And of course, critics have said, well, it hardly makes them relatable, does it, to ordinary people if they're spending £50,000 a year, more than most people earn, to educate their children. And Sunday Express commissioned somebody to write a piece about. I'm trying to think who it was. I think it was Leo McKinstry, but I can't remember who it was now. To write a piece about the Cambridges, and one of the suggestions was that they might consider sending their kids to state school. And I think some critics might say, well, Kate is all about giving children an equal start in life, giving the under fives much more focus for people of all sorts of backgrounds. But then there you have her children given special status, and they have benefited from the best medical care, the best private medical care, the best private education. Of course, others will defend them and say, "Well, they're perfectly entitled to do this, free country." I mean, I do wonder. I mean, I think some of the schools in that area, some of the state schools, are pretty good, and I do wonder why.
Yeah, I mean, within Windsor, the house prices around there are insane. So I can imagine the kind of people that live there, like, the state schools will be really in demand, and I'm sure they'll be absolutely suitable.
Yes, so I think some critics will say, well, why didn't they send them to state school? They could have set a good example there, and they'd be more in touch with ordinary people. Again, it's a free country, and it's up to them, I suppose. So what else to say about the move to Windsor? Well, it puts them close to the Queen, a sort of 10-minute walk from the Queen. Closer to the Middleton family at Bucklebury. Their office will still be at Kensington Palace. There's clearly a bit of controversy about the fact that they spent £4.5 million of taxpayers' money on doing up apartment 1A at Kensington Palace, which has 21 rooms, to be their official residence, and yet it seems like they don't spend much time living there now. And they're also going to keep Anmore Hall, their 10-bedroom mansion on the Queen's estate in Sandringham. So it's possibly not a great look when Prince William is campaigning about homelessness to have all of these different homes. And just to clear up one thing, there was talk of a fourth property, a holiday cottage on the Balmoral estate that the Queen, well, I think it is still true to say the Queen did at one point give it to William for his use when he was quite a bit younger. And there was a story on the National News Agency, PA, Press Association, on the day of this announcement, listing this as a fourth property, and I did try to check that, and there was maybe a bit of confusion, but I was certainly led to believe that was still available to them. It was later made clear that isn't available to them any longer. It's it's let out to private tenants, I think. So it is just the three places they have access to.
Yes, just the three with, if you add all the bedrooms together, 35 rooms to choose from. Val said, you can completely understand how the public feels. It's obscene with what the school fees cost when they're coping to feed themselves with the state this country is in.
Oh, yes.
There we go. But we're going to move on from them now, as I'm sure we'll be seeing lots of sweet pictures on the first day of term, I can imagine, which will, it's 24th of August, so I'm sure that'll be coming around soon rather than later. So lots of Royal fans, I'm sure, will be happy with those. But we're going to speak about Spotify podcast now, Richard. We've both listened to it. We've both got slightly opposing views, but I think we can both understand one another's views on this. I personally think it's interesting to hear a woman speaking about issues which I can resonate with and so many other women can resonate with, just from a female perspective. The way that I think that it was actually produced and stuff when it was supposed to be in this natural light, I think is a bit deceiving when there's about 30 people involved in the production. But what do you think about it, Richard?
Well, I just did a straight news story in the paper this morning, which focused on the one real news line from it, I thought, which was Meghan revealing that on the first day of their tour to South Africa in sort of end of September 2019, there was what she called a fire in the bedroom at the residence that Archie was to be sleeping in. In fact, he wasn't in the room at the time. He'd been taken downstairs, she said, by the nanny that was looking after him. My view is always that the real story about them is when what they say impacts on the monarchy. And she didn't overtly say it, but there was implied criticism of the institution, of the courtiers, of the royal aides, that she was forced to carry on working despite being terribly upset and tearful about the fact that her son, in her view, would have been then 5 months old, had narrowly escaped this fire in the bedroom. It's hard to get to the bottom of what actually happened, but it seems like there was a little bit of smoke in a heater. He wasn't in there. It doesn't seem as if he was in any real danger from what we can understand. Bit difficult to get to the bottom of it because most of the people who were involved on that tour no longer work for the royal family, and I think some of them feel really quite damaged by the experience of working for Harry and Meghan, and they really don't want to go back there and start reliving those times. Buckingham Palace declined to comment. But yeah, so that was the news story as far as I was concerned. And that's what I've done in the paper. But I feel there's a little bit of latitude here to express some personal opinions. And I just thought it was awful. I just thought that was an hour of my life I'll never get back. And I think
absolutely savage, Richard.
And I think it just shows what an appalling person she was to work for. The fact that she was getting all emotional and not, by the sounds of it, thinking that, right, that's it. She wanted didn't want to do any more engagements that day. She was going off to meet victims of apartheid, representing the Queen on this tour, and she was just upset about what sounds like a very minor incident, and I just don't think that reflects very well on her. And I think the whole program, the whole podcast, just felt like sort of one long self-congratulatory, self-aggrandizing whinge about the life she had within the royal family.
Well, I mean, that is the thing, isn't it? I do say, there are issues in there with, feminism, which I'm sure lots of women could resonate with. But also on the same note, we do have to remember the position that she was in. She did marry a prince, and how much she knew about the lifestyle before she got into it. But that would be to be expected of her. These plans are put in months in advance. Unfortunately, there is that attitude, especially a British attitude, of keep calm and carry on.
Exactly. They're there doing their duty and they're expected to just carry on with it.
Mal said Meghan spends so much time now leaving her children with others. It doesn't seem to bother her now. She should spend more time with her own children, seeing as she wanted to lead a normal private life. I mean, obviously, we don't know what she is doing day to day. I'm sure she does spend a lot of time with her children. But when they come to the UK, Richard, apparently they won't be bringing the children with them.
It doesn't sound like it at the moment. Yes, that's fairly imminent, isn't it? That their trip back here and to Germany. No, it doesn't sound like it at the moment, but you never know with them.
And we obviously heard from Prince Harry briefly at the start of the podcast too. Do you think that was a natural moment, him coming in, or do you think that was part of the Spotify deal that he had to be heard there too?
Well, I think Americans in particular talk a lot about the British tabloids and whatever, but I think if you read the upmarket papers in the UK today, you'll hear very similar or you'll read very similar sort of criticism of the piece that it was it's been blasted by, criticised by most journalists who reviewed it for the British national papers, the Times, Telegraph didn't seem that keen either, and I think one of the points that a number of reviewers have made is that it feels like Harry has to be in there because without him, she's nothing. That the fact that she is now a member of the royal family, albeit an exiled one, is what has made her a bigger name and relevant. But I mean, of course, she doesn't represent anybody. She doesn't represent the Queen. She doesn't represent the UK.
No.
She just represents herself, really.
And in terms of Buckingham Palace not commenting on this, is that sort of for most stories now to do with Harry and Meghan, do they just not comment?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, yeah. I think there is an attempt to try to move away from the briefing wars that were taking place when they left and when they started throwing brickbats at other members of the royal family. I mean, clearly, the palace never officially commented on, or in most cases didn't. I mean, apart from recollections may vary and the odd other thing. But of course, that may change again if Harry's memoir makes what they consider to be a series of unfounded complaints about Queen or other members of the royal family.
Indeed. And when is that memoir coming out?
Towards the end of 2022 is as much as we've got. I think most people think it will be released in time for the Christmas market. So you'd imagine you'll be hearing about it in October. I would think would be my guess, possibly November.
And will Harry have to send that across to Buckingham Palace before giving it the big green tick? Because obviously he'll be speaking about various members of the royal family, the goings on within the day-to-day life there.
No, it doesn't sound like it, and it doesn't sound like anybody's expecting that to happen. And given that he and Meghan have blindsided the royal their family and their family's advisors for much of the time since they, since that Southern Africa trip, really, that's when the complaints started being much more public. I wouldn't expect them to be giving advance copies to members of the royal family.
I'm sure they'll be keen to read it. But there's been various reports on lots of different tabloids in the past couple of weeks about Harry and Meghan being more aware that they've not been opened completely, with open arms, welcomed completely with open arms in the US, as I think that they expected to be. Is there any truth in that, Richard?
To be honest, I haven't read those stories, and it's very hard to get an inside track at the moment on what their thoughts are. I mean, I have heard some things about this memoir, but I'm not going to say what I've heard because I don't think what I've heard is firmed up enough for me to be able to be confident that it's true. So I'll leave it there, I think. Yeah. But I mean, it's clear that they have become, as we said the other week, that they've become very divisive figures in the US as well as in the UK. And it's such again, just have to say it's such a shame that they had a wonderful opportunity, and obviously it's such a shame for the royal family as well, and indeed for us in the media, that they were this great couple that were going to, everybody wanted to them to succeed, to be a great story, and it just turned sour so quickly, and
it really was quick. It really was quick.
Yeah, and I just feel that that podcast really is you listen to that and you can think, well, that's why Meghan failed at being a member of the royal family.
Yeah, interesting. Jas said it must be very difficult for the royal family not to be able to defend themselves when Harry and Meghan attack them. Yeah, I guess it wouldn't be very royal to sort of to do a back and forth, would it, Richard?
Really, no.
Maybe not. But moving away from the podcast, I'm sure another episode will drop. I think it's Mariah Carey, from what I've heard next. So I'm sure you'll be tuning in.
I'll be asked to tune in, yes.
In terms of what we've got coming from the royal family in the next week or so, will we be seeing any of them, Richard? What's to be expected?
It's not. No, it's fairly
Nothing.
quiet. I think. I think Balmoral remains the focus of what they're doing at the moment, I'm not really aware of anything coming up until early September, when we are likely to see the Sussexes in the UK and Germany, and as you mentioned earlier, the Cambridge children going to school. That'll be a one-day thing. I don't anticipate there being stories day after day about what they're doing at school because of the editor's code of conduct. Really, we have to be respectful of their right to enjoy their education without us.
No. Well, I have seen on the website, I think they have to sew on all their uniform, their little name tags and stuff. So I'm sure Kate will be very busy sewing away with all the different name tags. But there we go. But
that is very much something that I can imagine her doing, actually. So rather than giving it to some flunky to do.
Exactly, and that's what she wants, doesn't she? She wants a normal life as possible.
Yes.
I don't know how normal it can get though when you're part of the royal family, but there we are. I'm sure they'll have a lovely time. The school looks absolutely lovely, so I'm sure they will. But Richard, thank you for coming on, and we'll catch up next week with some more royal news. It's all quiet now, but you never quite know. In a couple of days, it might not be. But Richard, thank you. You can catch up with the Royal Roundup over on our Twitter. You can give Richard a follow on there, over on our Instagram, Facebook. We've now got a playlist as well on Facebook. We can catch up with all the Royal Roundup episodes. If you did fancy it one evening, it's all on there. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, Richard, and we'll catch you next week.
Thanks, Pandora.